All right. Hello and welcome back to the newest episode of the New Year's Six podcast. Today I'll be continuing my 2024 conference preview series. This time heading over to Middle America for our MAC preview as we continue down this group of five process here. So if you haven't watched any of the other previous videos, it's going to be the same format, starting at the bottom of the conference, working my way to the top. Doing a little review on every team, and then calling out a player on offense as well as defense that I think is due for a breakout year for whatever reason listed. So, with that, let's get moving on to a conference that doesn't have any changes at all. The only difference now is there's no divisions anymore. It's kind of the same as ACC, SEC, etc., who went from divisionless to open forum. So that's the only change. All the teams come back, and I know some are looking for a chance to take the crown this year. So let's start off with the team I have in 12th place. It's a team that actually, if we look at last year, had a pretty decent year by their standards. Not a particularly heavy hitter. Wow, in the conference historically. But I do think they take a pretty significant step back this year, especially with the divisions opening up and the personnel just not being in place right now to make that happen. So with that, the team I've got in 12th place will be Eastern Michigan. Chris Creighton's been there forever. He's done a serviceable job for over a decade, and again, solid last year. But I just don't see it coming together for Eastern Michigan this year. All those 50-50 games are going to be on the road. There's a lot of people coming into the program, some people moving around, some youth and inexperience. But I just don't think they're in a place right now to make that leap from above 500 because they ended up 6-7 last year. I think they end up kind of quite the opposite. I think they end up at the bottom of the conference, and there's a pretty significant drop off as a result of that. If we look at their depth chart, so a little bit of changes here and there, but again, position by position, O-line is going to be below average. They keep Mickey Riloninski at that left guard coming back. That's a big get. They bring in Blake Bustard from Wayne State. He has some experience under his belt, even if it's not at the FBS level. So those are two bright spots on the offensive line. Combine that with Carson Lee, Broderick Roman, who has some experience as well. And you get an offensive line that could be promising, but is ultimately not going to be the strongest part of this team, as well as the strongest unit in the conference. Receiver room, more of the same, probably one of the worst in the conference from a returning production standpoint. JB Mitchell is the only returning player in that position group with any sort of relevant experience. You bring in Porter Rooks from NC State. You bring in Warren Singleton from JUCO, but neither were particularly productive at their last roles. Jair Getzinger has his moments, but again, no one has stood out as that elite route runner or pass catcher for Eastern Michigan so far. So someone is going to have to step up if Eastern Michigan is going to make a dent in the team this year. Now, that being said, the quarterback situation is looking good, as well as the running back situation. So you bring in Cole Snyder from Buffalo. I think he's one of the best in the conference. So to give more positive spin on Eastern Michigan, Snyder has done particularly well at Buffalo, played a little bit at Rutgers, but I think he comes in and really elevates this team. If the O-line can stand up and if the receivers can answer the call, Snyder will have another fantastic year for Eastern Michigan as he enters his final year of eligibility. And then Delbert Mims comes in from NC State. He's a productive guy, under 100 rushes, but had 8 touchdowns at one point during one of his seasons there. I'm sure he's going to be as productive, if not more productive, at Eastern Michigan, where the competition is lighter. He comes in, as far as I'm concerned, as a top 3 back in all of the MAC. So there is some upside and there is some potential for Eastern Michigan on offense. It's a matter of can the rest come together, and maybe they can surprise some folks if the O-line plays well and the receivers live up to those expectations. Defense is kind of the same. The D line is very, very good. You have Peyton Price back there. You have Justin Jefferson, not to be confused with number one receiver in the league there. You combine that with Joey Zawinski. So there's a lot of talent in that front four. Definitely a lot to be excited about if you're an Eastern Michigan fan. A lot of returning production on that side of the ball. The linebacker room does not have a lot of returning production. You bring in James Johnkham from Arizona State, who played sparingly. You pair him with a redshirt freshman in Bryce Elliott, and there's not a lot of known production between the two of them. So I got a big question mark at that position group right now. Definitely want to see what comes together on that front. And then the DB room is going to be upper half. And I think it's top five, upper half for sure. If we look at who's coming back, you have Joshua Scott at corner. Combine that with Quintavious Scandrett at safety. There's some talent in those two guys. You bring in Bryce Llewellyn from Charleston Southern. So there's impact players at safety, at at nickel, at corner that are going to show up and be productive for Eastern Michigan this year. It's just going to be a matter of can the other pieces elevate them as well into a potential top three or number one DB room in a conference. So we look at our breakout players. The first one I will go with is going to be, again, on the offensive side of the ball, we'll go with Jair Getzinger, the tight end. Did pick up a tight end against Akron last year, 4-catch performance against Howard. So has shown up sporadically. I guess probably is used more as a run and pass blocker than a pass catcher. But interesting to see what will be used, how he'll be used, especially with the addition of Cole Snyder at quarterback. I'm sure Getzinger will be targeted more. I'm sure he will be, utilized more in some capacity. And, I think that positive quarterback play combined with another year of experience under Getzinger's belt will lead to a positive year for Eastern Michigan and this offense as a whole. So I'm looking at Getzinger just to rise to the occasion and be that red zone threat that Eastern Michigan needs this year. On the defensive side of the ball, we'll go with Bryce Elliott. Again, redshirted last year, didn't see the field, at 4 games or less. That's what he had. So, again, big prove-it year for him, big opportunity to step up into the limelight, step up into the spotlight, and can he do it? My thought process is that if, Coach Creighton has him out there, it's because he earned his spot. Regardless if he's the youngest guy out there, regardless if he has the least amount of playing time, if he's out there, he's out there. And, it's going to be up to him and the coaches to make the most of this experience. Someone has to step up in that linebacker room between Elliott and Junkman. I want to take the young kid. I want to give the guy that, doesn't have the most amount of experience the opportunity to get said experience and, make something out of this year. I don't think Eastern Michigan's going to, have a whole lot to be hopeful about and have a whole lot to be excited about. But if they get a diamond in the rough and they can retain him for a couple of years, Elliott could be something special for this program for the next, few years or so. So that caps off our 12th place team. In 11th, we have another one of our traditional, our traditional bottom feeder, so to speak. It's a team that, when it's all said and done, you got to question why they're at the FBS level, other than like the historic presence they have at the MAC. But at a certain point, you got to think to yourself, is dropping down or folding the program the best move? Because they have not had success in 10, 15 years. I can't think of the last time this team had a good year. And I think the struggles will continue this year. So with that, 11th place, going to be Akron. I don't think this is a surprise for everyone. Akron it's a tough lot. It's a tough draw to get. And I think Joe Moorhead is a decent to above average coach. He's just working with so little out there. They do not have a lot of great resources. They don't have a lot of great facilities, support from the university, nothing like that, which makes it very hard for anyone to succeed out there. And I just think Akron continues to take steps in the wrong direction as a program. They're going to be at the bottom of the conference again, and I have a hard time seeing when they will get out of it. Looking at the depth charts on the offensive side of the ball, O-line's not going to be great. You bring in Lawrence Seymour from Miami, but the rest don't have any real starting experience. You got Tyler Williams and Colin Lyons who have some rotational spots, from my understanding, but don't have a ton of returning production on the O-line. So it's hard to build anything when you're under pressure consistently. Receiver room actually looks all right, but it's more so just due to the presence of Alex Adams, who's a 9-touchdown receiver last year or the past 850-yard guy. So that's something to hold on to, but you can't base your offense all around one receiver. I'm sure they want to see the playbook opened up a little bit. Some other guys get into the mix. We just don't know who those guys are, and it's going to take some time to determine what that's going to be and who that's going to look like. At quarterback, you bring in Ben Finley from Cal. He's below average. Finally gets his starting spot, but historically has not done a whole lot in the limited time he's playing. Maybe the change of scenery and bringing him into Akron is the boost that he needs to get over the hump and do something productive over the course of his collegiate journey. Knowing that he does have a year of eligibility after this as well, this could be the springboard into an impressive senior year in 2025. But who knows? We got to figure it out this year first. And then running back is Charles Kellum. Not a whole lot to write on. This guy just has not played a significant amount. He's a redshirt sophomore. So don't know what the run game is going to look like. Time will tell, but generally speaking, it's an offense that I don't think has a whole lot to look forward to this upcoming year. Now, the defense has some pieces I think you can build around. If you are Coach Moorhead, if you are Akron, you got to think defense first at this point. The D line is one of your best position groups in the conference. Namely CJ Nunnally, who's kind of that linebacker D-line hybrid, Nathan Kapongo. So there's some guys over there that can play. Even Bennett Adler in the mix. There are guys who can make an impact up front pretty immediately. Linebacker of the same thing. It's a 1-2 punch of Antavius Fish and Brian McCoy. I think you got to be excited for that group if you're Akron. It might be the best linebacker group in the conference by the year's end. So I think the front 6 or 7 are something to be inspired by if you're Akron. They may not win a whole lot of games, and those games might be low scoring, but the Akron defense will make a name for itself in this conference due to what they have in that front 6 this year. The DB room is going to be below average. It's nothing special to write home about. Paul Lewis comes in from Cornell at safety. You have Darian Lewis back there at nickelback. He's one that you take a look at, and then the rest are just kind of guys that haven't really established themselves yet. Amon Greenwood comes in from Syracuse. The other guys back there are just kind of, again, younger guys or proven guys or rotational guys that haven't stepped up to the plate yet. They're going to get their moments this year, but it just hasn't happened at this current time. So if we look at the breakout player on Akron's offense, I'll choose Charles Kellum. Again, a guy that just has not seen the field in significant numbers. Someone that has not stepped up to the plate so far. A young guy that is looking to make a mark for himself, presumed to be the number 1 back at Akron for this fall. Time will tell, and we'll see what that ends up looking like when it's all said and done. I think he's starting for a reason and he's playing for a reason, but it's a tough go, but especially behind that offensive line, it's not going to be the best in the conference. What does Kellum do with that opportunity? If the line collapses, can he be shifty enough and can he jet out in a way that Akron needs, especially knowing that they're it's an up-tempo offense. He's going to get his opportunities. He's going to get his chances, but we just haven't seen a lot of Kellum so far. And this could be the year where we do see a lot of him and we do see him take that step. Time will tell, but if Akron establishes a run game, it's probably going to be on the back of Kellum. On the defensive side of the ball, we'll go with Joey Hunter. So he did have a pass defended against Temple and Buffalo last year, 3 tackle performance against Temple. So there's been some pieces of he's displayed moments that are good opportunities, right? Getting involved in the pass defense, getting involved in the tackling, all that kind of paves the path for you over the course of this year. And knowing that again, he hasn't played a whole lot, has been more of a rotational guy, and is now going to step up into a larger role for Akron as presumably the full-time corner. Hunter needs to be able to step up and adjust to that position group. Again, sooner rather than later. It's not the strongest group on this team, especially compared to that front 6 or so, which is impressive. But it's going to take one of the younger, less experienced guys, getting themselves into that type of position to ensure that Akron is in a place to compete in this conference. Because right now they're not. But if they get a guy like Hunter in the secondary stepping up and making his name heard, and you combine that with a good run game from Kellum, Akron will be performing above expectations. It's a lot of ifs, it's a lot of whens and mays, and uncertainties and guesses. But we have some guys that you can look forward to if you are an Akron fan, whether it's this year or beyond. So with that, I'm going to take it over to 10th place. And again, it's a team that struggled incredibly over the course of last year. Potentially one of the worst teams in college football when it was all said and done. I do anticipate a bump of sorts. Not a gigantic bump, but one that gives fans a little bit of hope for what lies ahead. So with that, the 10th place team in the NAC for me is going to be Kent State. So Kent State was a disaster last year. Kenny Burns came into a program that was falling apart, and it fell apart. One win last year. I imagine it was against an FCS team. It wasn't in conference, but you think there's more on the horizon if you are Kent State. There's more to be done. So, if that's going to be the case, you got to make the most of your opportunities this year. There are some pieces that you may be able to look forward to. There's some favorable scheduling potentially when it's all said and done, but I just don't see them getting that much further out of the basement than they were last year. If we look at the depth chart, a lot of in-house talent. So let's check O-line first. A lot of inexperience, a lot of question marks, a lot of rotational guys that are stepping up for the first time. I don't know what that's going to look like for this O-line because, again, I don't watch a whole lot of MAC football. I review my things in pieces, but this O-line is going to need to gel together quickly, and it's a lot of young guys. The 3 in the center there, Morrell, Page, and Farrell, are all sophomores, and they're being asked to step up pretty immediately. That's big long-term for this team, but right now there are not a lot of starts under this belt. There's not a lot of games under this belt, and it's something that in a conference like this where experience can help you greatly, you really want to see that. The receiver room is okay. No issues there. You bring in Sebastian Brown from Michigan State. That has some potential. You combine that with Krishan McCray and Luca Floria. There's some returning production on that front. Something to be looked forward to. I think you got at least 2 solid receivers that are going to carry this receiver core through the upcoming season. You have Tommy Ulatowski at quarterback. I think he's, again, an average quarterback from what we've seen. Played last year as a redshirt freshman, comes back now as the presumed starter. What is that going to look like for Kent State? How does that all come together? and then Gavin Garcia at running back, who I think is one of the weaker ones in terms of returning production in this conference, but definitely has an opportunity to make a name for himself this year. Definitely has a chance to do something impressive, for a Kent State team that is going to need to establish a run game in order to beat some of these teams that are going to out-talent them. On the defensive side of the ball, the D line is going to be average. You got Stephen Daly, you got Oliver Bilotti. Those two are, again, and it's a young team. You can see it on the screen, sophomore. You can see, and then as we get up there, we see more freshmen, and then a lot more senior players moving down. But it's just a young team from top to bottom, and a team that isn't ready to make that jump yet. But the D line will be good enough to keep them in games. The linebacker room is where things start to drop off. I like Nicholas Giacalone at linebacker. Your grad transfer back there, but the rest of those pieces don't really fit for me. Kind of the same with the DB room. You got Alex Branch at safety. The rest of those guys don't really jump for me. Maybe Xavier Coakley, but at corner. But as far as I see, it's just not coming together for that DB room. So again, there's not one room on this team that stands out to me as fantastic, which is why they're in the mix at the bottom of the conference. And just just going to be a tough season for Kent State across the board. But there is some hope, and there are some breakout players I think are due for something good this year. On offense, we'll go with Dustin Morrell, one of those guards, one of those sophomore guards, 3-star recruit in the class of 22, and again, straight to Kent State. They don't get 3 stars that often. I don't care if he's a top 1,000 player, a top 1,200 player. A 3-star is a 3-star when it comes to going to Kent State. So I want to see him take the advantage of the snaps and starts that he's going to be getting, and what that's going to look like for him and this team over the course of this season. The O-line is going to have to step up. The O-line is going to have to make a difference for this squad. And, one of those younger guys is going to have to be the reason that this is the case. So I'm going to take Morrell to be the guy for a Kent State team that needs someone to step up to the plate on that offensive line. And then on the defense, I will take Josh Baca, who, has played in some capacity sparingly. Had a pass defended against Northern Illinois and Ball State, 8-tackle performance against Ball State as well. So those are some things to look forward to. If you're Baca, there's been those moments, there's been those opportunities. But generally speaking, someone in that DB room is going to have to make the jump, have to make the leap. I think Baca is that guy, someone that can, again, has shown us in a limited capacity that, he is ready to be the player that Kent State needs in that secondary. It's just a matter of, is that going to happen full time? So I think Baca can do it based on what we've seen. Again, he tackles against Ball State, getting in the pass defending game. You can do that consistently, 12 games a year. Kent State defense will take that step forward. So that's what I'm looking at if I am at Kent State. I'm looking at Baca on defense. I'm looking at Morrell on offense for a year that's not going to be great, but will be better than last year to the joy of everyone, right? So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my 9th place team. This is a team that did pretty well last year, but I do think takes a step back this year. And they were around the 500 mark last year. I don't think they get to that mark again this year. It's just not in the cards as far as I'm concerned. So with that, I will take our 9th place team, Northern Illinois. So again, solid year last year, tied for second in the East, 7-6. So good year overall. I just don't think it comes together again this year. I think you do end up dipping below 500 again. you do end up back in a position where people are going to start to question what's going on out there. I think Northern Illinois is kind of like that up-down program where they'll have these 9-10 win years and they go back to like a 2-win year. I think it's somewhere in the middle, but it's definitely not going to be the same success that they had last year at Northern. So we look at the depth chart real quick. There's actually some pretty promising pieces on both sides of the ball. So they can defy this 9th place prediction when it comes together. O-line will be one of the better ones in this conference, especially that middle three of J.J. Lippy, Logan Schmiernitz, and John Champy. Those three in particular bring a lot of experience back to Northern Illinois. Definitely some guys to watch out for. A very senior offensive line that I know will be a big help for this team over the course of this year. Kind of the same with the receiver room. You bring back Trayvon Rudolph. You add Kenji Lewis from Arkansas Pine Bluff. You have a great red zone threat with Grayson Barnes. That tight end with a 5 touchdown year in the past. So definitely some pieces to look forward to in the running game as well. Ontario Brown is a monster. He's the best running back in the conference. So they're going to have to be run first at Northern Illinois this year if they're going to shock the world and beat some teams that they have no business beating. But it does come down to the quarterback play, and I'm not super sold on Ethan Hampton at this time. It can happen. It just hasn't happened yet. He's been, again, kind of that up and down rotational guy, start some games, play some games, sit some games. I think if he's the full-time starter this year and gets those reps and opportunities under his belt, Northern Illinois could end up far higher in these standings than what I have. On the defense, what we have here is the best D-line in the conference. I will give them that. The D-line is looking particularly good right now. You bring back Rasheed Thomas, who might be the best defensive end in the conference. You pair that with Devontae O'Malley, Roy Williams, Damon Taylor. Everyone in that group is a playmaker. So the fact that we got 4 of them in one position group was a very long way over the course of the year. So I will give Northern Illinois their credit on that front. They're definitely in a good spot. On the linebacker role, I think it's top 5. I think this defense is ahead of the offense. It's a top 5 looking linebacker group. Christian Furman really leading the way on that front, even combining Jay Dolphin in that mix. Those two are a duo that is going to make some noise in the MAC this year. So it's not as top heavy. It's not going to be like the number. It's not the number 1 team in the conference or not the top 3 team in the conference, but above average, and that's all you really need if you're battling towards the middle of the conference. Kind of the same with the DB room. You have Jordan Hansen back there at safety, Nate Valcarcel, Jayshawn Prophet. There's some guys back there that you got Javon Bird. So as far as I'm concerned, there's not a group on this defense that I think to myself, oh, that's the problem. That's where they're going to lose. Now for Northern Illinois, I don't see them as just particularly top heavy enough, so they're right towards that middle of the conference right now, lower middle at this current time. So on offense, the breakout player is going to be Ethan Hampton. That kind of makes sense. So did have passing touchdowns against Nebraska and Tulsa last year. Was a 3-star recruit in the class of 2021 and just finally getting a chance to fully start for Northern Illinois this year. That seems to be the case. He's had those up and down years, and I think he's now officially stepped up into the role of starter. So just very interested to see what that's going to look like for Northern Illinois as they finally have someone who's committed to that role as long as he stays healthy and as long as he plays consistently well. So I think Hampton is due for his time. He's cut his teeth. He's sat. He's been patient, and I think now it pays off as we get into the start of the season very, very soon. On the defensive side of the ball, knowing that there's a lot of good players to pick from, actually, I'll stick with Jade Dolphin. So Again, over the course of last year, uh, two passes defended against Eastern Michigan. So that's the same game. Seven tackle performance against Akron. So all of that comes together for a good, respectable year for Dolphin last year, and he's going to capitalize on it this year. I'm sure he's going to make a difference in the turnover game, whether it be a forced fumble, whether it be an interception. I'm sure he'll be involved as more of a leader on this team, knowing that he's one of the senior linebackers. I think it comes together for him. But maybe as a result of that increased performance, he gets some sort of recognition when it comes to playing at the next level and increases his draft stock. Who knows? But I think Jaden Dolphin is due for a pretty big year for a Northern Illinois defense that should be respectable, but just not at the tippy top of the conference. So I'm taking Dolphin on defense, Hampton on offense for a Northern Illinois team that I think, does take a step back this year, but not super substantially when it's all said and done. So now we head over to eighth place. This is a team that struggled last year. There's kind of a theme at the bottom of the conference. They struggled last year. I anticipate them to be in the bottom half again this year, maybe just a little bit higher compared to where it was. And again, some of these placements are arbitrary. Northern Illinois at eighth. I'm not going to freak out, but this is the team that I have in eighth. It's we'll see how it all comes together. But in eighth place, we'll do Ball State. So Mike New comes back for year 9, struggled last year. I anticipate roughly the same record, same placement potential. It's just going to be how the conference shakes out a little bit. But I think it's not going to be a great year for Ball State. They'll end up in the bottom half of the conference, miss out on bowl eligibility, everything along those lines. I don't think anyone's going to have an issue with those types of statements here. But if we look at the depth chart here, we'll start with O-line. O-line looks all right. Again, 3 in the center, John Mucciolo, Ethan Crow, Taryn Tayo. Those 3 come back with a lot of starts and experience under their belt. They're joined, they add Yasir Al-Awadi, who comes in from Western Illinois. That could be someone who makes a difference on the O-line, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good enough and it's a serviceable O-line when it comes to how this conference shakes out. Same with the receiver. Receiver actually is good. It's going to be a top 3 room. Tanner Koziel at tight end is a monster. You'll see him play out over the course of the year, but he's a top tier red zone threat from Ball State. And you add Justin Bowick from Eastern Illinois to a receiver core that was fairly thin outside of him. We can make an argument for Quian Magwood, but I mean it's a very thin room outside of those 2 guys, but they elevate the room so much that it puts them into the top 3. But outside of that, Caden Simonza is the starter now. Hasn't played a lot. Redshirted last year, played sparingly, but expected to do some good things over the course of this year. We just haven't seen it so far. Kind of the same with Charlie Spagel. There's a guy that has not played a lot over the time of his collegiate career. How does it look for those 2 as they get more permanent starting spots for a Ball State team that is going to need someone on this offense to be that leader? And where I think Ball State is being held back is their defense. When I look at some of those other teams that I've reviewed so far, where with Northern Illinois, I'm like, oh, there's not one team that's going to be the problem. I look at this defense, and I'm like, I don't see a room that's has someone who's going to be the solution. I think you have the least experienced D-line in the conference. You bring in Riley Tolsma from Hillside College. You pair him with guys that have been predominantly rotation players their whole career. How does that shake out? You have a linebacker where you bring in Justin Thomas from Indianapolis. And then outside of Keontae Newsom, you have a lot of guys that have been predominantly rotation guys. In the DB room, you bring in George Udo from Cincinnati, and you pair him with Tylan Baldwin and Jordan Coleman, and then some rotational guys. So it's hard for me to have a lot of faith in Ball State's defense just because so many of these guys are inexperienced or young or some sort of combination of the two. If if they had senior leaders with a ton of snaps under their belt and a ton of experience that we can see on the stat sheet, then I'd be singing a different tune. But right now, Ball State's going to lose their games because of the lack of experience on defense. So on the offensive side of the ball, we'll go with Charlie Spegal as that breakout player. So we had a rushing touchdown against Indiana State last year, 32 yards rushing against Georgia. I don't usually include yards that small, but that was against Georgia. So 32 yards against Georgia is like 300 yards against Miami, Ohio. So let's see what this touchdown looks like. I think it's just a punch in, but it represents, so he's at the 1 or so, just an aggressive runner, like not going to be stopped. I know it's Indiana State. I know it's a blowout, and I know that it's an FCS school, but just look at the way look at the never say die running mentality of, I'm just going to run through my guy. I'm going to run through my blocker if need be. So I think if Spegal can be used in short-term situations like that, or if he can get the ball moving in any sort of other way, he will be that impact player that Ball State needs so desperately in order to compete in this conference. Because right now they're not in that position to compete. So Spegal has shown, whether it's in short yard situations like that, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, those 32 yards rushing against Georgia were on like 4 carries. So he's averaging 8 yards a carry against the best run defense in the country, not just the conference. So where does that upside lead him over the course of a season where he's got more time and experience under his belt? I think he's going to be the front horse of the running back room, and someone that could really establish themselves over the course of this year for a team that needs an elite running back. And then on defense, we'll go with Riley Tolzman. So again, coming in from Hillside, 3-star recruit as a transfer. And I know that doesn't mean a whole lot to other programs, but 3-star at Ball State is a 4 or 5-star somewhere else. They do not grow on trees. So I'm curious how this works for Tolzman. I'm curious how this comes together for him, and what that looks like in terms of transferring to a bigger school and transferring to a more competitive conference. What does that look like over the course of this season? Again, my theory is that if you are starting in that role, it's because you have earned it, especially if you're coming from D3 or JUCO or a lower type of school. If you're ready to step up to the plate, the opportunities will come for you. And I think they're going to come for Tolzman because someone on this defense needs to be the guy to do it. And he's a grad student as well. This is it. So if he can step up from Ball State, maybe that defense shocks some people and puts them in positions they may not be used to. So I'm going to take Tolzman on defense, Spegal on offense for a Ball State team that should make some headway in the standings. I don't think the record is going to be too much different than last year where they struggled as well. So now we head over to 7th place. If we look at 7th place, it is a team that, again, following a trend, struggled last year. That's kind of how it works in the MAC. The bottom teams are rough. Struggled last year. They had a first-year head coach. Got a little bit of time under his belt now. I do anticipate them to make a little bit of a jump, but still kind of be below that 500 mark at the conference, be below eligibility, everything along those lines. But there are some promising pieces to this team, and that would be Western Michigan. So Lance Tilber is back for round 2. Didn't do great last year, but again, train is in motion, so to speak. And as far as I'm concerned, there's some pieces that Western Michigan fans should be optimistic about this year that could propel Western into the upper half of the conference, if not higher. I have them at 7th from a pure cautious standpoint, I think it's a baby step type of move, but I think Western should be competitive with the conference. It should win, a good chunk of those games against the rest of the conference there. So if you're looking at the depth chart real quick, offense actually looks pretty good. I'll say every position group, from what I'm seeing, is top 5 in the conference. That's how I compare all these. Is just where do you rank amongst the teams that you're playing against. So offensive line, right from center to right tackle, a lot of returning production. Jacob Gideon, Addison West, Jack Sherwin. So starter coming back. That's a big get. That's a big opportunity. And then the other two on the left, John Hofer and Adam Vandervest, are rotational guys that are just finally getting their chance to be in a good spot. The receiver room is, I would say, somewhat deep. You bring in Devon Mortimer from ULM. That's one to watch for. You have red zone threat in Blake Bozeman at tight end. You have a 700-yard guy in Kenneth Womack. You have a 5-touchdown guy in Anthony Sambucci. So from there, I don't see a particular weakness of that core. You have your yards guy, your red zone guy, your touchdown guy, your transfer guy. So there's definitely some interesting pieces to go about. At quarterback, you bring back Hayden Wolf. He's one of the best in the conference. You have Jalen Buckley at running back. He's a 1,000-yard guy, a 10-touchdown guy, one of the best in the conference. So from what I see, the offense is going to be what carries Western Michigan over the course of this year. Knowing that there are multiple style offenses that can come and go as they please, so to speak, it's going to be an exciting year on the offense to see what type of schematics they run quarter after quarter, knowing that they can change their plan of attack so easily if needed. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there's a little bit of a drop off. You bring in Popeye Williams from Louisville, and you put him with Corey Walker, Mason Nelson, Isaiah Green. It's going to be an average to below average D line, just again, in terms of pure returning experience. Linebacker room is more of the same. I like it a little bit more, but Donald Willis, Jacob Wahlberg, Damari Robertson, those are some guys that you gotta keep your eye on. All of them have a lot of production, a lot of experience coming back. All of them seniors looking to make an impact in their last season. So the linebacker room should be solid enough. The DB room is the best one in the conference. So you bring in Ryan Raybook. He comes in from St. Anselm's, so Division III, which you pair him up at safety with Tate Halleck, who's one of the best safeties in the conference, Aaron Wofford, one of the best corners in the conference, and Bilal Cone, who's an upper-level corner in this conference. There's 3 proven, experienced entities, and then the young guy the transfer from St. A's in Goffstown, New Hampshire. A little local reference there. But again, I think if you have the starting role, it's because you've earned it. But the other 3 around them are going to be able to coach him up pretty intensely over the course of the season. But it's the best DB room in the conference, especially if Raybook can step up as well. So on offense, the breakout player for me is going to be Devon Mortimer. Again, comes in from ULM, 3-star recruit in the class of 2022. Those don't grow on trees at ULM or Western Michigan. So the fact that he's coming in, with that, I would say chip on his shoulder, right? As a 3-star, never really played all that much at ULM, and looking to make a career-changing move for at Western Michigan. Can that happen? Will it happen? Who knows? But knowing that the receiver room has a lot of weapons around him, I think it's going to open up some options for Mortimer that maybe he didn't have the chance or opportunities for at ULM. So be on the lookout for Mortimer. See some more touches, see the end zone, everything along those lines over the course of this season. And then on defense, we'll go Popeye Williams again. Comes in from Louisville, 4-star recruit in the class of 22. Now, those really don't grow on trees at Western Michigan. This is a guy that displayed a ton of potential coming out of high school. Never really lived up to a Louisville, but has the chance to do so at Western Michigan and be the guy for them on the D line. It's already a position group that is solid enough, but if you get a 4-star caliber player on that D line and ready to make an impact and ready to make a difference, Western's going to be in some business. They're not going to finish at 7. They're going to be finishing closer to the top 3 if the defense can come together. I think a big performance from a guy like Williams is going to be the difference maker for winning and losing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm taking Williams on defense, Mortimer on offense for a Western Michigan team that'll be right in the mix of everything when it is all said and done. And, slowly but surely making strides that need to be made for this team long term. So now we are heading into 6th place. This is the middle of the conference. Again, team that I think was pretty average last year. Again, middle of the pack, and anticipate being middle of the pack again this year. A coach I have a certain level of bias against. I think that kind of gives it away. But I think if you look at the team this year, there's some promising pieces that may come together. And of course, this leads us to our 6th place team, Central Michigan. Former Florida head coach Jim McElwain in year 6. Didn't hit the bowl game last year, 5-7. I do see them coming back. I do see them going to a bowl game this year. I do think it comes together for Central Michigan. I do have them at around that 500 mark. So with that, it does put McElwain and his staff in a good spot for this year, as well as potentially keeping the momentum going for this team in the future. So if we look at the depth chart, O-line will be top 5. Water returning starts in Davis Heinzen, Dominic Serapiglia, and Braden Swartout. Those 3 in particular have a good chunk of starts under their belt. Not a lot of transfers coming in. If they do, they're more so for depth. And then you do have some depth pieces on the O-line with Martin Cuevisto and then Vashon Bailey. Those 2 have had their experience at their time. But it should be a top 5 team in the conference when it comes to O-line. Same with receiver. You have not a high ceiling, but a high floor receiver with Chris Parker, Jesse Pruitt, and Tyson Davis. Those 3 are all going to be options for this offensive attack this year. There's not there's not a top tier level guy. There's not a Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors on this team, obviously, but the ball is spread out incredibly evenly between the 3. So if one of them can emerge as like a top tier pass catcher, Central Michigan is going to be a problem at that position. But right now, everyone's seen as a threat because no one has emerged as the threat. As we move down the roster, Bert Emanuel has not played significant snaps. Kind of a question mark up there. Kind of a guy that has not seen the field significantly, but is ready to take the starting role this year. Time will tell what he's ready to do and how he enters that role. Knowing that he hasn't had a ton of time or experience under that in that position. And then at running back, more experience. I mean, it's more middle of the pack with Marion Lukes. 700-yard guy, a 5-touchdown guy. Not worried about that. So if the quarterback can get established early on, this offense should be clicking in no time. On the defensive side of the ball, I think things drop off a little bit. The D-line is going to be one of the weaker ones in the conference when it comes to returning production. You have Jason Williams, nose tackle. He's one to look at. Michael Heldman at DN is an interesting one. You bring in Jaden Davis from Wayne State. So from what I see, there's some interesting pieces. But can it all come together is the real question. There's just not it's not a four deep team on the defensive line. Linebacker is a little bit of a step up, but again, just I'd say an average squad. Dakota Cochran and Justin Whiteside are the two you got to watch out for. Those are your big time players, but not enough to carry them into a top 5 ranking or a top 3 ranking in that position group. And then the DB room is again a little bit of a step up as we just go backwards, but from what we've seen, probably not top 5. It's more towards the average. Caleb Spann, Daron McKinney, and Dante Kent are the 3 I would examine most closely. But from what we've seen, the defense will be good enough. The offense is definitely the strong suit of this team, and the reason they're going to be winning games this year. So, with that on the offensive side of the ball, the breakout player I will have is Bert Emanuel. So if we're looking to miss a passer, 87 yards and a touchdown against Michigan State, and then against University of New Hampshire, he had 101 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So a dual threat guy, especially at a program like this, you really want to see that. We do have one of those running touchdowns. I think he just takes off. So let's see what this is. So just snaps. I think it's design run. I don't think he's just panicked. But he's off to the races. He's quick. Just finds the hole and goes for it. So if that's the case, if that's what they're getting week after week, and I know they're not going to be playing UNH week after week, again, knowing that that's an FCS school and not a conference opponent, but I want to see it one more time. I don't know if it replays or if it gets cut right here. We'll figure it out in a little bit. Oh, it does. Okay, perfect. So yeah, just gets a good block, holds for days, and it's just faster than everyone around him. That's the type of performance you do need to see if you are a Central Michigan fan, but you need to see that against teams other than UNH. You got to see it against Western or Eastern or Kent. Like when those games have come around, can he have that type of performance? I think he can. I like him as a dual threat QB. I like him as as a young guy that's just figuring out the role. But the fact that he can take off like that and just bolt in the modern era of college football, where QBs really do need to be dual threat, that's a big big addition or a big big opportunity for Jim McElwain and team. On the defensive side of the ball, we'll go with Jaden Davis again, transferred from Wayne State. Big opportunity to prove himself on a D-line that needs someone to step up. I don't have his numbers at Wayne State. I don't watch Wayne State football. But the way that I look at it, again, if you're transferring away from Wayne State to Central and you're starting at Central, you've earned your starting spot. I think McElwain's got the guy that he needs in that role for a reason. And I think time's going to tell what that looks like for Central Michigan and their defense and their team as a whole. So that's where I'm looking at with that. I think Davis will be someone that can step up and deliver. Someone on that D-line is going to have to do it. And again, he's a senior. This is it for him. And he's transferring with intent to make an impact. So I'll take Davis on defense, Emmanuel on offense for a Central Michigan team that I think is going to bob above the mark that they set for themselves last year. As we head into 5th place, I've got a team that definitely fell below expectations last year and is here to make a change at that this year. It's a team that I think is historically one of the stronger ones in the conference when you consider everyone in here. Just had a bad year last year, but I think is ready to get back to the upper half of this conference and beyond, and that would be Buffalo. So Maurice Linguist struggled last year, 3-win season, but I think they're ready to make the jump to at least 5th. You'll see it when it all comes together, what their strong points end up looking like. But Buffalo historically has too much on the line and too much talent to be a 3-9 team year after year. So I think it's a big jump for them this year. When they end up 4th in the East, let's say that's 8th, and 8th to 5th and back into a bowl game goes a long way to build this program up. If we look at the depth chart, O-line will be all right. Tyler Dottie and Kalen Shepard are the two on the right hand side of the line that you got to look out for, the ones that you got to watch for. Good returning production on that front. The receiver room is questionable. You have J.J. Jenkins coming in from Columbia. I think he's an immediate impact player. You have Taji Johnson coming in from Boston College. He hasn't played a whole lot. We'll see what he looks like. But outside of those two, I don't know who you're going to really lean on if you're Buffalo. I think you're going to have to be a little bit more run first. At quarterback, you have CJ Ogbonna, who I think he's a top 5 guy in the conference. I think he's someone that can make an impact for you at Buffalo. He's a 1,500-yard guy, 12 touchdown guy. Those are the type of things you need if you are Buffalo to establish this offense early in the season. And then Jaquez Barkside is the running back. He's someone I think should be due for a big year as well. Someone that should establish himself in this starting opportunity for Buffalo. So just going to be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, so it's a Buffalo offense with some pieces that are workable, some pieces that are interesting, but nothing that's particularly like top of the pyramid there. And the defense kind of looks the same. The D line will be below average. It's a little bit less experienced. You have CJ Bazile, who I think makes an impact, as does George Wolo. Deshaun Folsom has his moments. Kobe Stewart has his moments. But it's just a lot of guys that have played predominantly in rotation. I'm just interested to see what it will look like full term or full time, and what type of impact they make, knowing that opposing offenses will likely be challenging those 4 head on. That's because the linebacker room is looking good. Sean Dolick is probably the best linebacker in the conference. Probably, right? You pair him with Red Murdoch, who in his own right is a very serviceable and capable linebacker, and you have a linebacker room that is top 3 in the conference, for sure. So I'm not worried about the linebacker, and then the DB room is going to be towards the bottom because outside of Marcus Fuqua and Charles McCatherines, I don't know who your playmakers are. Maybe Jaden Oliver, maybe, but I think we got to see more of this DB room over the course of this year before we can make a judgment call on where they end up. So on the offensive side of the ball, we'll go with Taji Johnson again, coming in from Georgia Tech or from Boston College, 19-yard catch against Georgia Tech over the course of last season. So just a guy who's looking for his playing time and his opportunity, looking to make that impact, and maybe found his new home at Buffalo to do that. Again, grad transfer, this is it for him. What does life look like after college? I don't know, but a big year at Buffalo could open up some doors for him. And I think he's capable of it. Again, if you got a Power 4 offer and you played at a Power 4 level, and now you're down at the MAC, you got something to prove. You got to tell people that you had an expectation for yourself that you didn't meet, and it's time to meet it. So I'm looking at Johnson to make that impact at Buffalo, live up to that expectation for himself over the course of his final season. And then on defense, I'll go with Jonathan Capo. Did pick up a fumble against Louisiana, had a 3-tackle performance against Liberty. So has had these little moments of impact, and we just got to see it full time. Now he's a junior. What type of impact does he have? What type of impact does he make at that strong safety position? And then from there, does he do it full time? I think he's going to be the starter. I think he's going to be the guy to watch on defense. And I think he's the guy that, as a result of that, makes an impact for Buffalo and helps them rise back up to the top half of this conference where naturally they belong. So I'm going to look at Capel on defense and Johnson on offense for a Buffalo team that should rebound pretty intensely year over year. I think they're going to be back to where we expect them to be by the end of this season. So from there, we enter our fourth place team. So this is the final third of the conference. And with that, our fourth place team is someone that had a great year last year. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all four of the remaining teams. Let me check. Yeah, just about all four of the remaining teams on this list had good to great years last year. And this team was no exception. They were just on the outside looking in. And I think with the pieces they have now, they'll still be in that outside looking in mentality. But, it's just going to be another solid, competitive year. So with that, my fourth place team is going to be Ohio. So a 10-win team, this past year, I don't have them at 10 wins. I have them kind of in the mix of things, but it should still be a quality year for Ohio when we look at what they've brought in. There's some question marks just due to some youth and some transfer pieces that are coming in. But from what we've seen, Tim Albin is a fantastic coach who I'm sure will take this team back to the near top of the conference over the course of this year. If we look at the depth chart, O-line is going to be below average to average. You have Parker Titsworth and Christoph Atkinson. I don't think it's Christopher. There's no R, right? Christoph Atkinson. Those two come back as starters. You bring in Tigana Sisi from Idaho. He's been a rotational guy. You have a couple other rotational guys with Jacob Dennison. So there's some talent on that team. There's some talent on that line. I think it'll be, good enough, so to speak. It won't be phenomenal, but it won't be a detriment. Receiver is where I've got some questions because outside of Jake Bruno at tight end, you basically have no returning production. You bring in Iman Dennis from Michigan. Chase Hendricks played a little bit as a true freshman, but outside of that, I don't know where you lean on with this team. Because it just, as far as I'm concerned, it has not clicked yet. It's just a lot of younger guys that have not had their chances. Dennis not having his chances at Michigan, being passed over. But, the way that I look at that, I just don't know who your number one guy on that offensive passing game is going to be. You have Parker Navarro at quarterback now. He's unproven. He's going to want a chance as a grad student. This is it for him. This is your 1-year deal. And, what does that look like for this team over the course of this year? Then you go to the other side of the spectrum with Ricky Hunt, who redshirted last year, but still had a 4-touchdown year while using the red shirt. Impressive in its own right. And he's, from what we've seen, a middle of the pack running back, but has the opportunity to really explode this year if given full-time play. On the defensive side of the ball, D-line is inexperienced. You bring in Marcel Walker Burgess from Nevada. You bring in CJ Doggett from from Cincinnati. And then, outside of and Doggett has barely played. You combine that with Braylon Henderson, who has his moments. It's just a very inexperienced group. Only one senior, and that's Walker Burgess from Nevada. So, what does that look like with this youth movement on the defensive line? What does that look like with building this team up, this year and beyond? The linebacker room, I think, is an upgrade, but is still going to be below average. You bring in Blake Leak from Bucknell. That's a big get. You pair him up with Shea Taylor, and really that's it. I don't know what that combination is going to look like. I like, the addition of Blake Leak, but it can't just be one guy, holding this whole room up. So I'm curious how the other players around this team, elevate it. And then the DB room, I think, is going to be all right as well. Adonis Williams and Austin Brawley are two good safeties. Roman Parody has his moments. Jeremiah Wood you know, even Tank Pearson. Like it's the best group in this it's the best group in this team in their conference here. So it's average below average, but it's the best group on Ohio's defense so far. So in on the offensive side of the ball, my breakout player will be Iman Dennis, again transferring in from Michigan, 3-star recruit in the COVID year, class of 2020. Just didn't find his footing at Michigan, redshirt senior, looking to make an impact now, and looking to make a name for himself at Ohio, looking to live up to 3-star expectation. It didn't work out. But you can make it in Athens, Ohio. So if that's the case, Navarro could have a pretty good weapon on his hands, someone that Michigan didn't recognize or didn't utilize properly, but he can get utilized here and end up in a good spot for his team this year. So I think Dennis has that chance and has that opportunity for Ohio this year. And then from there, just kind of builds the team around him over the course of this year. Then on the defensive side of the ball, we'll stick with the idea of transfers. CJ Doggett, 3-star recruit in 2022, who transferred from Cincinnati. Again, 3-star recruits don't come to Ohio all that often. You got to make the most of it. But, this is a younger guy as well. He's a redshirt sophomore, so just never found his spot on that team and is now looking to start and you'll be that impact player for Ohio on a D-line that needs someone to step up desperately. I look at it as if he got Power 4 offers and signed at a Power 4 school and then transferred out, he's got Power 4 ability that maybe just wasn't utilized or coached correctly or didn't have the proper motivation. But if you can find it at Ohio and make the most of the situation, he'll be right back on that Power 4 mentality. And I think he brings that concept of what he's seen and can use it to elevate this D line. So I look at Doggett and I'm looking at Dennis to break out on respectively defense and offense for an Ohio team that is going to be right in the mix of things down to the last couple of weeks. So that does bring us to our final 3 teams. I will reveal the third place squad because that reveals the championship. But in third place, a team that had a great year last year, ended up in the conference championship game last year, going to be on the outside looking in this year. A team that, again, one of the staples of the top of the conference, but someone who's going to be on the outside looking in this year and will not have a chance to defend their crown. That will be Miami. So won the conference last year and wants that chance to repeat as champions this year. I just don't think it's going to happen. So that leaves a conference championship of Bowling Green versus Toledo. Bowling Green, I think, is a little bit of a stretch, but hear me out when we get to that slide. So Miami on the outside looking in, but again, great year last year. I think slated again for another good year this year. Going to do well in the conference, and then just be a hair outside of what lies ahead of them. So a close but no cigar scenario for Miami this year. And as we look at the depth chart, there is a lot to be excited about. It's the best line in the conference. 4 of your 5 starters coming back. Will Jados, John Young, Kobe Borders, and Reed Holstein. And then Gavin Roars is a rotational guy that is now finally going to get to start. So the O-line is not going to be the problem. That's not the case. On top of that, Brett Gabbert is the best quarterback in the conference. So from there, you have quite a few opportunities to play well if you are Miami, specifically on offense. Now, the issues are going to come from the skill positions. Kenny Tracy is generally unproven at running back, does not have a lot of experience back there as the full-time guy, nor does this receiver. You have Cade McDonald and Javon Tracy, but then the players around you bring in Andre Johnson from Arizona State, you bring in Preston Daniel from Florida State. Those guys never really panned out at that level. What are they going to do at Miami? Time will tell. But it's not a it's not a case of They found some gem at a lower program that broke out huge and are now adding them to their receiver core. It's guys that didn't play all that much that are now looking for their new home and are looking to do something good. Defense, kind of the same deal. It's a top 5 D line. Don't get me wrong. Corey Suttle is a good defensive end. Kobe Hilton at the D tackle spot. Brian Ugu is probably the best D end in the conference. So there's a lot of talent on in that position group. And there's a lot of talent in the linebacker room. Matt Selapik and Ty Weiss, either or, you could argue is the best linebacker in the conference. And you've got both of them starting together. A lot of experience in that front 6 or 7. A lot of opportunities to be had. And, good luck if you're facing Miami's defense this year and trying to run the ball on them. I think you're going to be in for a tough day. And then at the DB room or at the corner, the secondary, I do think you drop off a little bit. It's more towards the average. I like Eli Blakey at strong safety. What is it? Oh, that's Ambe Caldwell. I thought I had a thing on my screen, but Ambe Caldwell at the other safety, that's a good place to be. Rayon Stratter at corner, Silas Walters at nickel. So there's a lot to be excited for. It's just not as top heavy and experienced as the other position groups are in relation to the rest of the conference. So on offense, our breakout player is going to be Preston Daniel. So tight end who comes in from Florida State, did pick up a receiving touchdown against Boston College. And if I'm not mistaken, it might have been the one at the end that allowed them to win because Florida State struggled against Boston College last year. They won by like 2. So if that's the case, and Daniel made that impact in a high intensity environment, he'll be fine against a Kent State. He'll be fine against an Ohio. He'll be fine against a Western Michigan. Again, that was a 13-0 Florida State team that dominated their conference, dominated their schedule from top to bottom. And now he's going to have the opportunity to play presumably lesser opponents, but with a bigger role. I think Daniel will thrive in that type of environment and be used as a good weapon for Gabbard over the course of the season. Then on the defensive side of the ball, I'll go with Michael Yarborough at corner. A 2-tackle performance against Delaware State. Played as a true freshman last year. Didn't redshirt. 3-star recruit in the class of 2023. Those are not lining up to go to Miami. Definitely a good get for Miami and someone that's shown early on that they can make an impact. So I think Yarborough is going to establish himself more in his role this year and kind of play up to those expectations and play up to that standard. And as a result of that, continue to grow and to develop as a cornerback for this team over the course of the year. So I'm taking Michael Yarborough on defense and Preston Daniel on offense for a Miami team that is still slated for a good year. It's just not going to go to the conference championship level. So with that, I'll go to number 2. I already spoiled who it is, so let's go. It's Bowling Green, not Bowling Green. Bowling Green, okay year last year, decent year last year, but I think this is a team that's going to step up in a big, big way this year and, really, rise to the occasion. Again, I think this is if we look at Miami's record last year was really 11 wins. Ohio had 10 wins. I think Bowling Green's going to be in the mix of that this year with the roster they've assembled, with the way Scott Wilford has coached this program up. I think this is the year it all comes together. It's a very talented and experienced team, and it's long overdue for Bowling Green when they've been known as one of the middle bottom tiers of this conference. So here we go. Looking at the depth chart, starting with the O-line, you bring 3 starters back with Alex Padgett, Nate Pabst, and Alex Wolschlager. But then you add experience in the form of Jake Burns. He's a rotational guy that's ready to step up. So there's a lot of pieces in place that were needed to be successful if you were Bowling Green, the O-line being one of them, and that's in a good place. The receiver room, Harold Fannin is a phenomenal tight end. And then outside of that, you look around the room. You have R.J. Garcia coming in from Kansas State. You have Malcolm Johnson coming in from Auburn. So some power forward guys that are looking to make an impact at a new home that just didn't work out for them at the in Manhattan or at Auburn, right? So good experiences there. At the quarterback position, Connor Basilick is looking to make another step forward. I think he's a top 5 quarterback in the conference. I think he's someone that if he has a great year, um, you know, goes out with a bang and potentially makes an NFL roster. Because again, he's close. This is his last year of eligibility. I'm sure he wants to make the most of it and take Bowling Green to a conference championship, knowing that they've been probably quite some time. And then Terrion Stewart is a top 3 back in the conference and someone that I know is looking to eclipse that 1,000-yard mark this year. So the offense has a lot of tools in place to have a great season when it's all said and done. Defense, very similar. The D line, I think, is going to be on the average side of things. Right towards the middle. You have Dontrez Brown and Anthony Hawkins in the middle. Add Ali Said or Saad at the D end. Even Jordan Porter has his moments. So the D line is not going to be a problem. It's going to be right in the middle, as is the linebacker room. Just a lot of the same, right? With Brock Horn and Joseph Sipp. Demetrius Hardemont has his moments as well. He can get sacks. So I'm not worried about the linebacker room either. It's going to be right towards the middle. The DB room is probably the best room on this team altogether. You bring in Ja'Cory Benjamin from Texas Southern. You bring in Darius McClendon from Florida Atlantic. Compare that with Trent Sims, one of the better safeties in the conference. Darius Lorfils, Jordan Oladokin. It's a room where everyone is a playmaker. Everyone's ready to make an impact and a difference. So I think the DB room is going to be something that you keep an eye on. It could be one of the better ones in the conference, and if not all of the group of 5 when it's all said and done. So on offense, we'll go with Jalen Tillman as the breakout player. Played very, very sparingly, but a 35-yard touchdown catch against Western Michigan. Those are the types of plays you got to see and you got to make if Bowling Green ends up in the conference championship. So, again, if you can do it 1 week, you can do it all weeks. That's my theory on this. If you can do it 1 week, you can do it all week. If you got a 35-yard touchdown catch once, you can do it against Western, Eastern, or Central Michigan. It shouldn't matter. So I just think he's going to have 2 catches last year, 37 yards. One was a 35-yard touchdown catch. So I'm hanging my hat on that it just hasn't come together for him. He's a senior. He's ready to continue to progress and get better. And this will be the year that he has the opportunity to do so. So I think Tillman can be that guy and can be that guy to step up for a receiver corps that needs someone to step up if they're going to compete at that level. And I think his just experience around the program carries a lot of weight as well. So I'm going to take Tillman at wide receiver as your breakout player on offense. On defense, I'll go with Jordan Porter. 2-sack performance against Western Michigan. So these breakout guys just love beating up on Western Michigan. Had a pass defended against Toledo, so I guess probably just stuck his paw up there, played back in coverage, did something. But I do have him more on the D line. I know he can play back as a Jack. He can play both sides, D line or linebacker. Both sides need someone to step up. So I think Porter is that perfect hybrid guy to make an immediate impact or make an immediate difference on a team that needs someone to make that immediate difference. Again, this is a team that is looking to go to the conference championship, is looking to take it home to their campus, right? They haven't done it in a long, long time. And a big performance from a guy like Porter is going to make that a possibility and a potential probability, right? Who's to say they won't be the favorite? Time will tell. But I think a big year from Porter and a big year from Tillman are going to tip the scales in Bowling Green's favor and put them in a position not just to get 500, not just to hit a bowl game, but conference championship game and beyond. So that does lead us to our number one team, our conference runner-up last year. We'll go with Toledo. So they're back in the conference championship game. They won it in 22. They lost it in 23. What are they going to do in 24? Time will tell. But from a roster perspective, it's going to be very similar to what we've seen by both the top 3 or 4 teams, where there's no real liability, there's no real issue, and there's a lot of potential upside for this team, anywhere you look at it. But Jason Kendall is one of the best coaches at the Group of 5 level. I hear he gets Power 4 calls all the time for either coordinator or head coach roles. Hasn't happened yet, hasn't taken it yet, but if he keeps up a performance like this, those calls are going to keep coming. And, I think eventually it will, something will line up where he gets one that he likes. But we look at the offense here. The only real question I have is on the O-line. It's just a lot of rotational guys, not a lot of starts coming back. You bring Jacob James from Ohio State, who just a rotational guy there that, was a big pickup, looking to establish himself as a starter. As is Garrett Schwebert. Carter Foudy is the same way. Ethan Spoth is the same way. Everything along those lines. But just not a lot of starts. That's the only issue I'm having with that offense so far. The receiver room is huge. Jerwan Newton is coming back, and he's going to make it immediate. He's probably the best receiver in the conference. And you add that with Junior Vander Ross, who's an upper-level receiver in the conference. You combine that with Larry Stevens, who's a solid receiver. You add in Anthony Torres at tight end. He's a red zone threat. He's a good blocker. And, knowing that it is a pass-first, spread-style offense, having those receivers there is big. Having them in the position to succeed is a big get for Toledo. So I'm not worried about the passing game. Not worried about the quarterback. I think Tucker Gleason is, pretty average when it comes to this conference. So interesting to see, what type of strides he makes, knowing that he wasn't the starter in the past, but is ready to be the starter this year. Same deal with, Jaquez Stewart, who I have a little bit of ahead of quarterback play. I think, that's more like the top 5 range. But Jaquez Stewart, I'm sure once he hit the 1,000-yard mark, once he hit the 10-touchdown mark, can that be the case? In a spread offense, he can. If they utilize the running backs properly, it can happen. So I think Stewart wants to have that big year, wants to make an impact for his team, and again, also wants the opportunity to win another conference championship. On the defensive side of the ball, every group that I'm seeing is top 5. I think the D line is top 5, right? You bring in, you have DeAndre Ragan, you have Darius Alexander, Kevon Butler, Deshaun Holt. I don't see a weak spot in that D line. I think that's a top 5 group. Same with the linebackers. Daniel Bolden is one of the best linebackers in the conference. Jackson Barrow right beside him is serviceable and an upper level linebacker in this conference. I think that's top 5, closer to the top 3, let's say. And there's a lot of seniors. I'm looking at this list right now. I'm only seeing 3 juniors out of 11, and the rest are seniors. This is a top-heavy team. I don't know what next year's going to look like, but this year's looking good. DB room, I think their top 3 gets even better. You bring in Jadarius Perkins from Florida. You have Maxon Hook back there already. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, your other safety. The 2 DBs or the 2 cornerbacks are serviceable in Avery Smith and Desir Bowers. So I am not worried about anything on the defensive side of the ball. Really, the only group that I have a concern about would be the O-line. Everything else is fine for this team. And there's a reason they're going back to their conference championship game. So on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to take Stephen Gales, a 3-star recruit in 2022, who has redshirted and played predominantly as a rotation/special teams guy. He's going to be needed on that right-hand side of the offensive line. Again, it's an O-line that's begging for a leader, and knowing that the kid is so young compared to the rest of this team, he can be that leader and he can be that quickly. If he can step up, use his voice, and perform, the O-line is going to be right back to the standard. It's going to be right back to where we started from, and presumably 4 of these guys could be coming back next year, with Gales being one of them. So while the defense is all gone, the O-line could be a big bright spot for the future. But it's going to depend on a great performance by Gales this year, in particular. If he can get that done, if he can step up to the plate, then Toledo is going to be just one step closer to a conference championship and a potential playoff spot. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with Deshaun Holt. So sticking on that D-line, 2-sack performance against Bowling Green and the fumble recovery against Miami, Ohio. That's the type of stuff you want to see from a senior edge rusher. And again, I don't see a weak spot on this defense. It's hard to find someone to break out when really everyone in every position group has a good chunk of experience. But I think Holt is going to elevate himself through this team and potentially be one of the best D linemen in the conference, get all conference honors, potentially get all American honors, potentially, like if he breaks out far enough. But I think Holt is in for a big year just due to how many defensive weapons Toledo has. And if you're an opposing offense, you've got to plan for them all, and maybe you let Holt slip by because you got to worry about DeAndre Raggett region. You got to worry about Darius Alexander. Maybe Holt slips by and gets a couple of sacks that he shouldn't have gotten, and just creates these opportunities for himself. So I think Holt is going to be one of the anchors of his defense. That bend don't break mentality, and Holt's going to be the reason why Toledo is back in the conference championship game, knowing that the defense is going to play such a significant role in them getting there. So with that takes us to our final standing predictions. And again, some of these are loose. Some of these are interchangeable, and I'll tell you which ones they are quickly. Again, if you see, that team in this position should be higher or lower, like to a certain degree, I can believe it. There's a margin of error with any of these predictions. I got Eastern Michigan at 12. I'm confident about that. I got Akron at 11. I'm confident about that. Kent State in 10th. I'm confident about that. Northern Illinois 9th, Ball State 8th. If you wanted to flip those two, I would be all right with that. Western Michigan 7th, Central Michigan 6th. If you wanted to flip those two, I would be all right with that. Buffalo 5th, Ohio 4th. If you wanted to flip those two, I would be comfortable with that. Where am I at? Miami in 3rd, Bowling Green 2nd, Toledo in 1st. All 3 of those, I think, stay the same. Those are your clear 1, 2, 3 in this conference, and that's the way it shakes out when it's time to pick a conference champion. So, with that, we have our matchup. Does Toledo, finally get their revenge and get their conference championship back, or do we get a newcomer to the mix who is ready to make a name for themselves, ready to make a splash? So, with that, my final prediction for the MAC this year is that our conference champion is Toledo. This Toledo team is stacked. Toledo is routinely one of the best group of 5, group of 5 teams in college football. I see no reason why they're not going back to the conference championship game, and I see no reason why they're not winning. So, should be a fun year up in Northwest Ohio. But again, game isn't played on paper; it's played on the field. So, those other 11 teams definitely have a chance of it. But where do you think these MAC teams are going to end up? Where do you think I got it right? Where do you think I got it wrong? Like, comment, subscribe. Comment down below. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for doing this journey with me. Tune in next time as we review the Mountain West Conference, as we finish up these group of 5 conference preview videos. It's Mountain West, it's Sun Belt, and then I'm doing something for the independents and the Pac-12, Pac-2. But we are almost there. I'm recording this Sunday night. This is the last week of the year without any college football. So get excited. We are almost there, guys. We are 13 days away at the time of this recording, probably 12 by the time I post it. So the end is near, and we're going to have a great time doing it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you again next time.